Darren Cade wiped the coolant spray from his forehead with the back of a hand permanently marked by grease and solder burns. He tightened the final coupling on the plasma manifold of the station's oldest cargo hauler, listening to the engine whine as it settled into something close to stable. Frontier Station 12 had been patched and repatched so many times it was more salvage than design, but for people like Darren, it was the closest thing to home. The recycled air always tasted faintly of metal and exhaustion, and the artificial day-night cycle was half a beat off, leaving the corridors buzzing with tired nerves. Still, it was where he and his 12-year-old son Tomas had carved out their lives since the raid that had taken his wife 3 years earlier. He got by fixing other people's mistakes, scavenging parts, and doing what frontier mechanics had always done, making miracles out of scraps. "Darren," a voice called from the observation deck, rough as gravel yet threaded with concern. It was Buck Harland, one of the station's old-timers, and one of the few who still called him friend. "You might want to see this. Emergency lane just lit up, something's bleeding air fast." Darren groaned but grabbed his toolkit anyway. Emergencies were rarely what they seemed. Usually it meant some pampered trader from the Corps had pushed their engines too hard and expected frontier folk to fix it cheap and quick. Still, work was work, and Tomas needed new supplies for the academy program. The magnetic boots clanked as he moved through the maintenance tubes toward the emergency ring. Then he saw it. Through the viewport stretched a ship that didn't belong in this sector, not by a long shot. Its surface shimmered between deep indigo and starlight silver, sleek lines flowing like something grown rather than built. The docking hatch hissed open, and she was there. Calling her a woman felt insufficient. Her skin glowed with a pale violet tint, almost luminescent under the emergency strobes, and her long white hair drifted with a weightless motion as if stirred by some unseen current. The suit she wore was seamless, shifting from matte black to iridescent pearl as she moved. And her eyes, silver-threaded with faint flecks of gold, fixed on the exposed circuitry with calm focus. "Need some help?" Darren asked, forcing his tone neutral. She pulled off a pair of elegant atmosphere goggles and turned to him. Up close, the intensity of her gaze almost made him step back. "You're the mechanic?" she asked, voice smooth but carrying a gravity beyond her years. "Something like that." He set his toolkit down and crouched near the access panel. "What's the trouble?" "The atmospheric processor. 3 Perex out, it started failing. I barely reached your station before total collapse." Darren examined the lines, and what he saw sent a chill through him. This wasn't failure. This was sabotage. The cuts were too clean, too deliberate. He kept that thought to himself and said, "Lucky you made it here. Another hour, you'd be venting more than air." She folded her arms, the gesture strangely human, though everything about her screamed otherworldly. Still, there was a weight in her presence, not arrogance, but the bearing of someone accustomed to command, and perhaps burdened by it. "You from around here?" he asked casually, already patching the lines. Her hesitation was brief but telling. "Not exactly. Passing through." "Shame," he muttered, sealing the manifold. "Don't see many ultra-ion cruisers in this backwater. Would have been nice to have one around." Her lips curved faintly, almost a smile. "You recognize ultra-ion design?" "Lady, I may work on rust buckets, but I know ships." "And this one?" "Royal Diplomatic class. The kind they don't let just anyone fly." Something flickered in her expression, not amusement, not surprise, but curiosity. She studied him as he stood. "And what about you?" she asked. "Just a man keeping machines alive and raising his boy," Darren said. Nothing that compares to flying a diplomatic cruiser out here. She extended a hand. Celera Vera, she said softly. Celera, if that's easier. Darren Cade, he replied, shaking her hand. Her grip was firm, steady, nothing of the fragility one might expect from someone draped in luxury. He nodded toward the ship. Try the processor now. Celera moved with fluid grace, activating the sequence. The vessel hummed back to life, its systems purring like nothing had ever been wrong. Relief washed across her features, replaced quickly by composure. I owe you something, she said, reaching for a credit chip. Darren shook his head. Not worth charging. Took me 10 minutes. Her brows lifted slightly, as if she couldn't quite process someone turning down payment. Slowly, she returned the chip. Then you have my gratitude. She turned to board, then paused at the ramp. Someone like you is wasted on this station, she said. Before he could reply, the cruiser glided out with an elegance that made every other vessel look clumsy. Darren knew, deep in his gut, this wasn't the last time he'd see her. That night, back in their cramped quarters, he sat at the table while Tomas hunched over an outdated learning tablet. The boy's sandy hair fell into his eyes, so much like his mother's that it made Darren's chest ache. Dad, Tomas asked without looking up, who was that lady with the ship? Darren tried to keep his face neutral. Just a traveler passing through. Station's not that big, Dad. Everyone's talking. Mr. Harlan says she looked like one of those core world nobles. You like her, don't you? Darren ruffled his son's hair, hiding his discomfort. Focus on your work, wise guy.
But when Tomas returned to his studies, Darren's thoughts drifted back to pale violet skin, silver eyes, and sabotage lines that didn't belong in frontier space. Someone had tried to strand her, or worse. The next morning, he was elbow-deep in a mining vessel's reactor when his private comm chimed. Only a handful of people had that frequency. Mr. Cade, a polished voice said, "My name is Administrator Corvin Hale, representing Stellar Engineering Corps. Your name was recommended to us for a special division. We'd like to offer you a position on Meridian Prime." Darren froze. Meridian Prime wasn't just another posting. It was a crown jewel, a paradise world. You've got the wrong man, he said automatically. I assure you, we don't, Hale replied smoothly. The recommendation came from a highly respected source. Travel expenses covered. Interview tomorrow. The comm clicked off, leaving Darren staring at the empty bay. Either this was the chance of a lifetime, or the beginning of something far bigger, and far more dangerous, than he'd ever imagined. The transport waiting for Darren Cade the next morning was not the modest civilian shuttle he had expected. Instead, a sleek military-grade craft settled into the docking ring, armor plates catching the light, weapon arrays humming faintly as though daring anyone to get in its way. The pilot, a woman with short-cropped hair and a corporal's insignia, gave him a curt nod but offered no words during boarding. Tomas waved goodbye from behind the viewport, Buck Harlan standing beside him with a steadying hand on the boy's shoulder. The trip through hyperspace lasted 12 hours, the silence broken only by the hum of the engines and the occasional flicker of starlight across the viewport. Darren spent the time trying not to think of Celera Vera, yet every memory of her silver-flecked eyes cut through his attempts. When Meridian Prime came into view, even a seasoned mechanic like him couldn't help but stare. The planet glowed like a jewel, oceans of crystalline blue wrapped around green continents, 3 moons dancing in precise harmony above. The station orbiting it gleamed with crystal steel architecture, light refracting as though the whole place had been carved from starlight. Compared to Frontier Station 12, it was like stepping from a scrapyard into a cathedral. Waiting at the docking bay was a man who looked as though he'd never been smudged by a day's labor. His hair was styled to perfection, his suit tailored within a breath of arrogance. Mr. Cade, he said warmly, extending a hand that gleamed with rings. Corvin Hale, Administrator of Stellar Engineering Corps' Meridian Prime Facility. Welcome. Darren accepted the handshake reluctantly, feeling calluses meet manicured skin. He followed Hale through shining corridors lined with holographic displays. Warships, colony arcs, even experimental jump cores rotating lazily in the air. It was a temple to ambition, and he felt like an intruder at the altar. The division we want you to lead, Hale explained as they walked, isn't about routine engineering. It's about synthesis. Human and alien systems working as one. We need someone who sees beyond manuals, who refuses to accept the word impossible. Darren raised a brow. And you think that's me? Our benefactor certainly does. Hale pushed open the door to a conference chamber overlooking the northern continent. Darren had barely taken a seat when the opposite doors whispered open. She entered as though she belonged to the room, and perhaps she did. Celera Vera, sovereign of the Alterian systems, her pale violet skin glowing softly under the crystalline lights, her white hair arranged in an elegant, gravity-defying twist. She wore a tailored business suit rather than her starship attire, yet somehow looked even more untouchable. "Hello, Darren," she said, her voice calm and deliberate, as though yesterday's docking bay exchange had been nothing more than a prelude. He stood slowly. "So this is your setup?" "I recognize talent when I see it," Celera replied, folding her hands with the kind of poise that had been trained from birth. Hale cleared his throat, as if to punctuate her words. "Mr. Cade," Hale said, "may I present Her Imperial Highness Celera Vera, Sovereign of the Alterian Systems and Chief Executive of Vera Holdings." Darren blinked. 37 inhabited worlds, a fleet rivaling Earth's, and business holdings across half the mapped sectors. Yesterday she'd been a stranded traveler with a busted processor. Today she was revealed as one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. His words faltered. "Yes," Celera said smoothly. "And I'd like to offer you a position." His instinct screamed to walk out. He hated manipulation, hated being maneuvered like a piece on someone else's board. But then he thought of Tomas. The opportunities here would change the boy's life forever. "The position is real," Celera continued. "Head of the new Hybrid Technology Division. You'd oversee human and Alterian systems working together. The pay is substantial, the benefits extensive. And your son would have access to the best education human space can provide." "And the catch?" Darren asked, folding his arms. "The catch," she said, silver eyes unblinking, "is that you'd be working for me. And in this climate, that paints a target on your back." Corvin Hale shifted uncomfortably, but Celera pressed on. "There are factions, human and Alterian alike, who despise cooperation. They see me as a threat. They'll see you as one, too." Darren studied her for a long moment. Despite the revelation, despite the deception, he believed her. "Can I think about it?" "Take the night," she replied. "But don't take too long. The galaxy doesn't wait for anyone." That evening, Darren found himself standing at the window of quarters larger than his entire home back on Frontier Station 12. Below, Meridian Prime's oceans shimmered under 3 moons. His comm pinged, a call from Tomas. "Dad. This place is amazing," the boy said, wide-eyed. Buck leaned into frame, giving a half-smile. "They have real schools here. With teachers. Not just holo-programs. Can we stay?" Darren laughed softly. "Nothing's decided yet, buddy. But you're thinking about it," Tomas pressed. "I can tell." Darren sighed, staring past his reflection to the lights below. He was thinking about it. Maybe too much. The next morning, he walked into Hale's office with the contract in hand, signed. Hale smiled like a man who had just won a bet. Celera stood nearby, and for the first time since he'd met her, she allowed a genuine smile to reach her eyes. Welcome to the core, Hale said. Just so we're clear, Darren said, meeting Solera's gaze. I'm doing this for Tomas. Not because I need saving. Noted, Solera said softly. Yet something in her tone made him wonder if, perhaps, she'd saved him anyway. The move to Meridian Prime happened faster than he could have imagined. Within days, he and Tomas were settled into an apartment with separate bedrooms and real windows. Tomas thrived in his new academy, while Darren reported to a facility overflowing with technology he'd once only dreamed about. Not everyone welcomed him. You must be the frontier miracle worker, drawled a voice on his first day. Commander Rex Dalton, head of engineering, tall, polished, carrying the smug weight of a pedigree education. His eyes carried disdain as sharp as any blade. Just here to do the job, Darren replied evenly. Right, Dalton said, making it sound like a curse. Let's see if Her Highness's pet project can deliver. Darren ignored him. His first assignment. A hybrid fighter prototype plagued by dangerous fluctuations between its Alterian core and human navigation systems. Engineers had been stumped for months. Darren spent 3 days pulling it apart in silence. On the fourth, he called the team together. The problem isn't the tech, he explained, activating a holodisplay. It's the assumption. You're forcing one system to dominate the other. What if they operate independently but communicate through a shared interface? Using adapted medical neural links, he built a buffer system. When they powered the fighter, it hummed to life, stable, balanced, perfect. Even Dalton's sneer faltered. That night, Solera visited him in his office. She leaned against the desk, studying him with quiet intensity. Impressive work, she said. You were watching. I watch all my investments. Her lips curved slightly. Dalton giving you trouble? Nothing I can't handle. I could have him transferred. Darren shook his head. That'd prove I don't belong. I'll earn their respect the same way I always have, by being better than they expect. Something flickered in her eyes, something close to admiration. You're not like most humans I've met. Good or bad? Different. Refreshingly so. Before he could reply, she straightened. There's a diplomatic reception tomorrow. I'd like you to attend. You're my chief engineering specialist now. That makes you a player, whether you like it or not. And just like that, she was gone, leaving Darren staring at the door, wondering what exactly he'd stepped into. The crystal spire shimmered above Meridian Prime's capital like a shard of the stars themselves. Inside, chandeliers of floating light crystals bathed the grand chamber in soft radiance. Darren Cade stood at the edge of it all, tugging at the collar of a rented formal suit that fit about as comfortably as a pressure clamp on bare skin. The place was packed with human admirals, Alterian nobles, and enough politicians to suffocate a room twice its size. He nursed a glass of Alterian wine, its taste equal parts starlight and bad decisions. Across the chamber, Solera Vera glided through the crowd. Her gown looked alive, woven from liquid starlight that shifted from silver to deep violet as she moved. Heads turned, conversations faltered, and Darren realized with a jolt just how much she truly belonged to this world of power and elegance. But then he noticed the man she was speaking to. Tall, imposing, his skin a deeper shade of violet blue than Solera's, his hair black enough to swallow light. His posture screamed ownership, his smile a weapon. That, murmured a voice at Darren's side, is Lord Kalen Drax. Corvin Hale had appeared, his expression tense. Let me guess, Darren muttered. An old flame. Former betrothed, Hale confirmed. She ended the engagement. Caused a scandal the nobles still gossip about. He's been circling her ever since. Persistent, entitled, and powerful. Darren's jaw tightened. Across the room, Kalen leaned too close to Solera, his hand hovering at her elbow like he was staking a claim. This obsession with human technology is beneath you, Kalen was saying as Darren drew near. His voice carried just enough for surrounding guests to hear. You are sovereign of 37 worlds, Celera. Why lower yourself to their level? Because innovation has no species boundaries, Celera replied coolly. Something you might grasp if you looked beyond your own reflection. Kalen's smile hardened. Always too headstrong. It's what I admired about you. But you need someone to guide that fire. I don't recall asking for guidance, Celera said, her voice sharp enough to cut. Everything all right here? Darren asked, stepping to her side. Kalen's dark eyes swept over him with disdain. And you are? Darren Cade, he replied, offering a hand Kalen ignored. Chief Engineering Specialist for the Hybrid Division. Kalen's lip curled. Ah, the frontier mechanic. How quaint. Collecting strays now, Celera? His voice dripped venom, deliberately loud. First you toy with human corporations, now you keep their engineers as pets. Darren forced his jaw to unclench. He'd dealt with men like this before. At least she recognizes talent when she sees it. From what I hear, you wouldn't notice innovation if it rewired your ship while you watched. A ripple of stifled laughter spread among nearby guests. Kalen's face darkened several shades, but before he could retort, Celera slipped her hand through Darren's arm. Excuse us, she said smoothly. Together, they walked away under the weight of Kalen's glare. You just made an enemy, Celera murmured once they were clear. Worth it, Darren replied. Nobody talks to you like that. Not while I'm around. She studied him sideways, something unguarded flickering in her expression. For a heartbeat, the mask of sovereignty slipped. The moment didn't last. A voice broke through the crowd, Administrator Hale, looking pale. Your Highness, Darren, there's been an incident. At the facility. The prototype fighter lay in smoking ruins when they arrived. Not damaged, not sabotaged halfway, but systematically gutted. Key systems ripped out, cores destroyed, neural relays scorched beyond repair. Security footage? Darren asked sharply. Wiped, Commander Dalton admitted grimly. Whoever did it knew exactly where to avoid. A young engineer approached, trembling, holding out a datapad. We found this. On the screen was a single message, some things shouldn't be mixed. Lord Kalen Drax. Celera's expression turned to ice. He declared war over a job. Darren asked. Not over the job, she said quietly. Over me. He sees you as a threat. Anger boiled through Darren. He looked around at the wreckage, then back at the team of engineers, some frightened, some furious. Then we rebuild it, he said firmly. Better than before. Dalton scoffed. The presentation to the Joint Commission is in 3 days. Without the prototype. We'll have it, Darren cut him off. Anyone willing to pull double shifts, stay. The rest of you, go home. Not one engineer left. For 72 hours, the facility became a forge. Darren worked beside them, his hands blackened with oil and coolant, driving forward through exhaustion. Celera herself joined, stripping off her finery, pulling cables, and running diagnostics with the rest of them. Her presence fueled the team, making them push harder than ever. On the second night, Tomas appeared with Buck, carrying a tray of sandwiches. My dad doesn't quit, Tomas told the weary engineers proudly. Ever. By dawn of the third day, they stood before a new prototype, not just rebuilt, but transformed. Darren had woven in redundancies, layered Alterian lattice shielding with human adaptive code. The ship wasn't just functional, it was nearly indestructible. When the Joint Commission arrived, a mix of human admirals and Alterian lords, Kalen was among them, his smirk radiating smug anticipation. I hear there was an unfortunate incident, he said loudly, drawing eyes. A shame, when frontier mechanics meet real challenges. Actually, Darren said, stepping forward, it was the best thing that could have happened. With a gesture, he revealed the gleaming new fighter. Its design was a perfect marriage of Alterian elegance and human pragmatism. Engines purred, systems lit, and when the demonstration began, the fighter didn't just perform, it soared. Maneuvers impossible by conventional ships played out in flawless arcs. The sabotage exposed weaknesses we hadn't considered, Darren explained. Rebuilding from scratch gave us something stronger. Faster. Smarter. A vessel that's more than human or Alterian, it's both. The commission members nodded, some even applauded. Stellar Engineering Corps has our approval, the lead admiral declared. This is the future of travel. Kalen's face twisted in silent fury. He turned to leave, but not before locking eyes with Darren. The message was clear, this isn't over. That evening, while the facility celebrated, Solera found Darren in his office, sitting on the edge of his desk, looking more relaxed than he had ever seen her. You did it, she said softly. We did it, he corrected. Couldn't have without you. Her gaze softened. I didn't bring you here just for your skills. You looked at me on that station and saw someone who needed help, not a sovereign, not a title. Just, someone. That's what people do, Darren said. No, she whispered. That's what you do. He reached out, brushing a hand against her cheek. Her skin was cool, faintly luminescent under the lights. It's why you what? He asked gently. Instead of answering, she kissed him. It was unlike any kiss he had known, charged, almost electric, their differences colliding and finding balance. When they finally parted, both were breathless. This is complicated, she whispered. The best things usually are, he replied. But even as they held each other in that quiet office, Darren couldn't shake the weight pressing at the edges of his mind. Kalen wasn't finished. He would never be finished. And he was right. 3 days later, the attack came. Not on the facility. Not on Solera. But on Darren's life where it mattered most. Darren Cade had just picked Tomas up from the academy when his communicator chimed with a priority alert. But it wasn't from the facility. The caller ID made his blood run cold, Child Protective Services, Meridian Prime Division. The voice on the other end was smooth, bureaucratic, detached. Mr. Cade, a formal complaint has been lodged regarding your fitness as a guardian. You're required to report immediately. What complaint? Darren demanded. Concerns regarding your dangerous work environment, irregular hours, and exposure of a minor to industrial sabotage. The complainant has requested anonymity. But Darren already knew who it was. When they arrived at the sterile offices of CPS, Tomas sat beside him, confused, small fingers clutching his sleeve. The door opened, and in walked Lord Kalen Drax, flanked by 2 lawyers in robes that screamed wealth. His smile was all predator. Mr. Cade, Kalen said smoothly, surely even you must see that dragging a child into your precarious existence is irresponsible. Leave Meridian Prime, leave Solera, leave all of this behind, and perhaps your son won't be placed in a more stable home. Darren wanted nothing more than to put his fist through the man's perfect teeth, but Tomas's wide, frightened eyes held him back. You really think this will make her want you? Darren said quietly. Kalen's eyes gleamed. Solera will understand that her experiment in human companionship was doomed. She belongs with her own kind, leading her people, not playing house with a frontier mechanic. Before Darren could respond, the door hissed open again. Solera stepped inside, her pale violet presence filling the room like a storm front. Behind her walked an elderly Alterian woman, robed in silver, the markings of a high adjudicator of the court. Lord Drax, the adjudicator said sharply, this action ends now. Kalen stiffened. This is a human legal matter. No, Solera cut in, her voice like cold steel. This is an attack on someone under my protection. And according to Alterian law, that makes it very much our matter. She produced a holographic document, glowing faintly with royal seals. This is a formal declaration of protection, extending sovereign immunity to Darren Cade and his son. Any action against them is an action against the Alterian throne. The adjudicator scanned it, then nodded. Legitimate and binding. Lord Drax, you will withdraw your complaint immediately. Kaelin's face flushed deep indigo. You can't be serious, he's human. He's mine to protect, Celera said, her voice carrying finality. And if you ever threaten him or his son again, I will strip you of every title and fleet you possess. The room was silent. Kaelin's lips twisted, but at last he hissed, withdraw the complaint. He stormed out, but not before casting a venomous glance at Darren. Tomas broke the silence first. You're like a space princess superhero, he said to Celera, eyes wide. Despite the tension, she laughed, a warm, genuine laugh. Just someone who protects her friends. Friends? Darren asked softly. Her silver gaze met his. Maybe more than that. News of the declaration exploded across both human and Alterian space. Media feeds speculated endlessly, was Darren a pawn, a symbol, or a scandal? Human pundits debated whether this was romance or political gambit. Alterian nobles fumed that their sovereign had lowered herself for an inferior species. But within the facility, something remarkable happened. Engineers, human and Alterian alike, rallied around Darren. He treated them all as equals, respected their work, and most importantly, had stood toe-to-toe with Kaelin Drax. You've got bigger guts than a Reelian war beast, Buck Harlan said over comms from Frontier Station 12. Taking on nobles, kissing emperors, quite the upgrade from fixing plasma couplings. Darren groaned. Wait. What kiss? Buck chuckled. Oh, you didn't know. Security footage leaked. Half the galaxy thinks it's the romance of the century. The other half thinks it'll spark war. As if summoned, Admiral Patricia Hayes of the United Earth Forces appeared at his office door. Mr. Cade, she said formally, your situation has become the most significant interspecies development in half a century. Handle it carefully. There are factions that want peace. Others that want you erased. After she left, Darren sat in silence, the weight of politics pressing down on him. He was a mechanic, not a diplomat. How had he become the fulcrum of galactic history? The comm chimed. Celera. Come to my quarters, she said softly. We need to talk. Her residence on Meridian Prime was a penthouse carved from crystal and light, more gallery than home. But when Darren arrived, Celera stood by the window, shoulders bowed under invisible weight. The High Council has summoned me, she said without turning. They demand I return to Alter immediately to answer for this, lapse in judgment. You're leaving. Darren's stomach sank. If I refuse, they'll send fleets. It could spiral into war. She turned, and to his shock, tears shone in her silver eyes. Then we go together, Darren said firmly. No human has ever set foot in the High Court, she warned. They'll humiliate you. They'll try to prove you don't belong. Let them, Darren said. I've been underestimated my whole life. At least this time it's for something that matters. She stared at him, then pulled him into a desperate kiss that tasted like both love and goodbye. You impossible, stubborn human, she whispered. Is that a yes? That's an I love you anyway, she replied. The journey to Alter lasted 3 days through hyperspace. Tomas spent the trip pressed against the viewport, wide-eyed at the shifting rainbow of quantum resonance. Celera sat beside him, explaining the dance of infinities. Watching them together filled Darren's chest with a dangerous warmth. But when they emerged, the sight of Alter stole his breath. A planet swirled in deep blues and violets, crystalline cities blooming from the landscape itself. Its 3 moons glowed in synchronized orbit, each alive with shimmering metropolises. Tomas gasped. It's beautiful. It's home, Celera said softly. Though her tone carried no joy, only weight. At the spaceport, an honor guard awaited, though their posture made clear this was no welcome. Kalen Drax stood at their head, smile sharp as broken glass. Welcome, human, he said mockingly. The court is eager to hear your case. Darren tightened his grip on Tomas's shoulder, Celera stepping forward with regal poise. Whatever awaited them in the halls of Alterian power, he knew this much, they would face it together. And whatever history wrote of them, traitors, lovers, bridge builders, or fools, they were already too far in to turn back. And so, that's where we leave Darren Cade, Celera Vera, and young Tomas. Standing at the threshold of history. What began as a simple repair job in a rusty frontier dock has turned into something far greater, a clash of cultures, politics, and personal loyalties that could reshape the galaxy itself. Think about it for a moment, Darren never wanted any of this. He was just a mechanic, a father doing his best to keep his son safe in a hard, lonely corner of space. But by trusting his instincts, and by refusing to look at Celera as anything other than a person in need, he found himself bound to one of the most powerful figures alive. And in her, Celera discovered something she hadn't known she was searching for, someone who treated her not as a sovereign, not as a title, but as herself. Their journey has only just begun. Ahead lies the Alterian High Court, the weight of 37 worlds, and Kalen Drax waiting in the shadows with every weapon he can muster. The stakes? Nothing less than whether humanity and the Alterians will forge a shared future. Or tear each other apart. Stories like this remind us that sometimes, the smallest decisions, helping a stranger in a docking bay, refusing a credit chip, choosing to rebuild instead of giving up, can ripple outward until they shake the stars themselves. And they remind us, too, that love, loyalty, and stubborn courage can cut through the noise of politics and fear. If you've enjoyed following this journey, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what happens next. Give this video a like if you believe in stories where hope and connection matter more than power, and share it with someone who loves sci-fi drama as much as you do. The galaxy is wide, and together, we've only just begun to explore it.